Welcome to the Integration Station. I'm Naturally Ashley, your host, here to guide you down the rabbit hole into the world of psychoactive plants, frogs, and fungi. Good morning, you beautiful souls, and welcome back to the Integration Station. I am Naturally Ashley, your host here. I'm also with a special guest today, Michaud Wilson from Harmony Acres Farms, and this was so exciting and also requested from some of those in our network. So, I know you guys have been waiting for this. Michaud has been working with psychedelics and spiritual practices since 2010, working with herbal and fungal preparations since 2016, and has spent the last 2 years dedicated to Amanita muscaria specifically. He served over 10,000 people Amanita. He works also in wholesale and retail. His mission is to provide consistent, powerful, and energetically pure herbal medicines for the people of this planet, and I am so excited to introduce him to all of you today. So let's get started.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Hello and welcome back to the Integration Station, you beautiful souls. I've got a wonderful guest here, Michaud Wilson from Harmony Acres Farm, and I'm just really going to pass it over to him right now so he can share his journey to Amanita. We've talked a little bit over the last little while about his journey, but I didn't want to ask too many questions or dig in too much because I really wanted to save it for all of you, and excited to do that now. So Michaud, I've been waiting. Let's dive in. Tell me all about you.
All right. Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm super excited to talk with you and share with your audience some of my experience with Amanita. And it's easy before you start recording. It's easy to just get into the rabbit hole. So I'm glad that we stopped and hit the record button.
Yeah.
So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if you want, I can just kind of give my background with Amanita. And
yeah, please. Well, even if you wanted to start at, what led you to Amanita, because I'm sure that there's a story there, because in your journey, you were working with psychedelics for many years. Amanita's just really been the last couple where you really dedicated yourself. So we'll be doing a couple parts here, maybe on this one, just that initial, what brought you to psychedelics? What's your story?
Yeah. So, psychedelics in general, I guess, started as a young teenager. I had been taking Adderall as a kid. I was a ADHD kid, and I found that smoking cannabis was helpful for calming my nerves. It was able to help me sleep. It was able to help me eat, all the things that were the negative side effects of Adderall. But taking them together wasn't the best thing for me. It was creating kind of like intrusive thoughts and depression, chronic depression, and but I kind of denied that for another 15 years. In the meantime, I had experimented with other psychedelics like LSD, psilocybin, DMT, ketamine, even ayahuasca and San Pedro or mescaline. And I have always been a curious person, so altered states of consciousness have always, piqued my curiosity. And I guess whenever I first heard about Amanita, it was what most people think. It's a poisonous mushroom, it's psychedelic. Stay away from it. It's not good. And I kind of just left it at that. You know, I remember seeing my first Amanita in my parents' backyard, and it was like just a big dinner plate size one, you know, just massive. And I remember looking at it with curiosity and kind of horror. And it was just like, okay, I'm gonna stay away from that. And then I had this one day where I was at a party and I realized that I really needed to quit smoking cannabis. It wasn't a good thing for me.
What happened? What happened that you knew?
So I was just chronically smoking all the time, and I was always chasing that high. Like I would have to smoke like every 1 or 2 hours because I, you know, mentally wanted to like maintain that level. And it was really unhealthy, and I just knew, like, at that party, because I was smoking a lot that night, I knew that was like this is really a problem, and I don't feel myself, you know, I don't feel myself. I'm too focused on trying to adjust my mental chemistry, and I'm not being able to be present with people. I'm not able to like fully step into my power. And at that moment, somebody, or like at that party, somebody said, "Hey, have you tried microdosing Amanita muscaria?" And I was like, "What? Like that's that poisonous mushroom. It's psychedelic. Like why would anyone do that?" And just kind of left it at that. And I had slowly started to begin weaning off of cannabis. So I went from smoking like all day, every day, to smoking at night. And then after a couple weeks, I went to only smoking like a couple times a week. And during this time, synchronistically, 2 other people came up to me and said, "Hey, I tried a large dose of Amanita muscaria." And I was like, "What? Like, again? Like, you know, this keeps coming up." And I was like, "Okay, well, like this person isn't dead, and you know they seem to be normal, so like what's the deal? Like what happened to you?" And the one guy said, "You know, not much really happened during the experience, but it's been weeks later and I still have this profound sense of peace." And I said, "Okay, well, that's interesting." And the other guy was very similar. And so I said, maybe there's something to this. And I began doing research. I eventually ordered some caps, some dried Amanita caps, and I started making my own tea. And meanwhile, I'm weaning myself off cannabis, and I'm smoking CBD, and you know, the CBD was also kind of creating this dependency. Like I have a very addictive mindset, which is probably been potentiated by my Adderall use as a teenager, because they've shown in long-term studies that Adderall use as a teenager can create addictive personalities. And so, you know, it's a dopamine agonist. So, you know, it's always seeking that dopamine, you know, the motivation and the reward.
Yeah, the quick dopamine instead of building up that long-term dopamine, which comes from long-term goals and exercise, and build the serotonin to actually keep and maintain your happiness.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, always looking for that quick fix, the next high. But, you know, something was interesting. Whenever I started microdosing the Amanita, I would make tea and I'd freeze it in little ice cubes in little portions. And I'd have my little mushroom ice cubes. And I started to notice that I was getting a lot of the same things from Amanita that I was looking for with cannabis. Some things like reducing my anxiety, reducing my depression, reducing my intrusive thoughts and my chaotic ADHD mind, and it helped me sleep. Doesn't help me eat, but I have no problem with that whenever I'm not taking a stimulant, you know, like Adderall, which can curb your appetite. And and also being able to connect with people, like loosen my inhibitions, let my guard down. It's affecting a different neural pathway, but it kind of achieves the same result that people are looking for with a lot of different things. And like, I can totally get into that, later. And
Please.
yeah, and it's just, I don't know. I was able to stop my dependency on cannabis, which was unhealthy for me. I sometimes I envy people who can smoke weed and it's not an issue. Sometimes I'm like, man, it smells so good, it tastes so good, like it feels so good, but it's just not my medicine. And
Yeah. I tried ice. I even wrote an article on over 30 different herbs that you can use instead of cannabis. I work with even more than that, smoking them. And cannabis is still one of the best tasting. There's something to it, but yeah, I have to take breaks from it too. Addictive personality I have. It's not that the plant itself is exactly addicting, but for somebody with an addictive behavior, that goodness, that getting that high is so addicting.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, and all the flavors you're saying, all the different terpene profiles, it's such a wild and robust plant. And now we got all these hybrids and everything. And
yeah,
I didn't really have an issue with it as a teenager until I actually started getting some good weed. When I was smoking what we called middies, it's just, Mexican brickweed, whatever, it's just, it doesn't look that good, doesn't taste good, but it didn't get you super high. But once I started smoking some Northern Lights, homegrown, it created this whole, just my mental state was not in a healthy place. And that's one thing that I don't really feel with Amanita. I don't feel like it's affecting my thinking in a negative way. It slows my mind down. And some people say it doesn't help with ADD, but I 100% agree. I 100% think that it does. And I have customers that I work with that also say the same thing. It's just not going to be the same thing we're looking for. If you take Adderall, you're taking this amphetamine salt. It's a stimulant. And that's going to do something different than something that's a GABA agonist, like muscimol, which is the main compound of Amanita muscaria that people are looking for. Some other things that are GABA agonists are alcohol, benzodiazepine, lavender, chamomile. So I like to share those things with people to kind of give the genre of effects that you're going to experience. But dissimilar to chamomile or lavender, Amanita doesn't necessarily make you sleepy. It's just if you need to sleep, it'll help you sleep. But if you need to work, it'll help you work. It helps people that have fatigue, chronic fatigue. I have Lyme disease. It helps me with the inflammation, the brain fog, the fatigue that comes with Lyme disease. So, I think it's one of the master plant teachers that we will start to understand more in the modern culture, in the modern lexicon. A lot of the Amanita muscaria use in history has been kind of wiped out, along with other indigenous cultures, plant medicine use. But we're starting to
the cultures get wiped out, and then the stories get wiped out, and his story is the only thing that really lasts, which really did take out and even demonize a lot of these medicines that were traditionally used. Amanita, that was one that was used in religious sacraments. It was one of the originals that's depicted in all types of different art, and and stories from those who have held on to it. Psilocybin too, but I think Amanita, there was, something more. A lot of our even stories that we hold on to now, like Christmas, still that comes from Amanita too.
Yeah, I think that the whole Santa Claus thing too. That's hilarious. But yeah, so many cultures have used it, and it literally grows, I think, on every continent on the earth. So you got to think about, like, people got curious, Yeah. Like, what's this giant red mushroom that just grows everywhere? Like, let's see what it's about. And that's why I like to call Amanita, like, it's almost like the quintessence of the symbol of occultism. It's hidden in plain sight. It's everywhere, but nobody really knows about it. It's mysterious. It's dangerous. It has a lot to offer, and it also needs to be respected and properly, used. Because if you ate a raw mushroom versus dehydrated it and ate that versus had a full decarb, lemon tech tea where you're converting all the ibotenic acid into muscimol, you could have completely different experiences. And me being the curious psychonaut that I am, I have eaten raw Amanita mushrooms just to see what happens, and it's a very wild experience. I would not recommend it to anybody. It's the ibotenic acid stimulates glutamate in the brain, and it's a very, like, neuroexcitatory, and I think that if I were to do it again, I would just take, like, a nibble. I took a small cap and I ate half of it. I weighed both sides. I was scientific about it, and I dehydrated the other half, and I had that in a tea 2 weeks later, and it was completely different experience. Like, the first one I took, the first half, it was like it almost felt like I had taken ecstasy and, like, drank some alcohol. Like, I felt very open and uninhibited, but I also was sick for the first 2 hours. It was very difficult to get through that first 2 hours. And then the rest of the day, I kind of just was very, like, loose and dreamy, and I felt good, but I was like, man, this was kind of difficult to get through, and I don't really feel like I'm going to accomplish much today. I ended up driving around and looking for more Amanitas.
Like, called back to the forest.
Yep.
What was the weight?
So the weight for that one, I believe, so the wet weight was 13 grams. So the dry weight was like 1.3. And that's a pretty small mushroom. But it's important to say this for your listeners, that each mushroom can vary in potency by, like, tenfold. So you could have one mushroom growing side by side another one that could be 10 times stronger or weaker than the other. That's why, when people buy caps and they're doing their own preparation, I personally recommend, like, take whatever amount you have and, like, grind it all up and get a homogenized, average dose. Because if you ate
what I got here,
nice. Yeah,
I didn't know that part, but I did it naturally because I noticed that with other mushrooms too, that they range.
Right. Yeah, so that it just, all these things add to, like, the mysterious nature of it. It's the Super Mario mushroom, it's the Alice in Wonderland mushroom, it's the the mythology around and surrounding Christmas. It's in all throughout medieval art.
Yeah. Yeah, it's on so many of my kids' cartoons, and like I look for old dishware that has it too, like olden day kitchens, like 60s.
Yes.
Like they knew.
Yes. I live around a bunch of Amish people, and I went to an Amish yard sale, and I found a little ceramic tile like wall hanger that was an Amanita mushroom. I was like, I'm grabbing that. Like,
awesome.
Yep. So yeah, and like the whole the Sami people, which is from current day Lapland in northern Europe, they have a strong culture around Amanita muscaria with shamanic use. I forget how to pronounce it. I'm going to butcher this. Kerouac people in Siberia. They also have a strong history with Amanita muscaria, and there is some good evidence that the whole concept of soma in the Rig Veda in Hinduism, that soma was actually Amanita muscaria too. And I'm actually doing another podcast tomorrow about Celtic re-indigenization with Amanita muscaria. So I've been doing some research on that, trying to find some more history around that, because I'm like almost full-blood Celt. I'm Scottish, Irish, Welsh, English. So that's kind of my jam, and I feel like I'm actually, for once, taking like my ancestors' sacrament, which is pretty cool. Being a white person in America, we're like disconnected from our culture and our history and our lineage, and like what our ancestors did, how we connected with spirit, how we connected with the earth, how we connected with our bloodline. And I feel this kinship with Amanita muscaria, like my ancestors have taken this. So I'm really having fun diving into some of the history behind that.
Yeah, I think so many people can relate to that no matter what culture they are. And I love that, you bring up that it's really on every continent, it all means something, whether it was somebody who brought it around or if it's just been here for us, regardless, it's here, and so are we. And it's up to us to, it still holds that knowledge. If we are what we eat and we're consuming this thing that our ancestors once did, we're also getting their little breadcrumbs. I just think it's so beautiful. But on that note, I would love to just break to be able to show our sponsors, and then we'll have you right back on and we can dive in more to Amanita. But this also gives anybody a little bit of time to just sit on that, think about your own ancestry, think about what their sacraments might be in this psychedelic world. Was it a plant, a frog, a fungi? Yeah, fungi, like yourself. All right.
I just want to show anybody who's is that backwards? Can you see that?
Yeah, fungi to be with. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. I had to.
Yeah, thank you. I'll see you in a minute, Michael.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
When you think of the number of unique products developed in the fields, kitchens, and labs at Legacy 420, it's hard to think that one stands out above the rest. But tell that to the thousands of people who have tried this amazing breakthrough product.
This is our Sacred Salve. This is actually our extra strength. It comes in 5 different strengths. It's all natural, all organic. It typically works within 10 to 15 minutes of putting it on. It's good for arthritis, it's good for inflammation, any kind of pain. We're very proud of it.
Sacred Salve, so easy to apply, along with soothing relief. To select a strength that's right for you, come in and talk to your trusted partner. Legacy 420 out on your road.
Did you know that the Pace Radio Network isn't just a radio network? That's right, because most,
but not all of our programming is now done via video and is then podcasted at paceradio.net. So if you want to watch our programming, you'll find us on the Pace Radio Network's Facebook page, plus the show's own page, and you'll find us live on the network's YouTube channel. And don't forget, you can find it all, video and audio, at paceradio.net.
Pace Radio Network, by patients, for patients, and for those who want to know.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Are you a cannabis content creator? Are you looking for a place to have your content seen? If you answer yes to both questions, then you need to check out cbgtv.com.
Let's share Pace everywhere. That way it can help create peace. People everywhere advocating cannabis education. You're listening to the Pace Radio Network, here at paceradio.net.
All right, welcome back, you beautiful souls. Welcome back, Michael, the all things Amanita guy, the fun guy.
I'm a fun guy to be with.
Yeah. I really want to pick your brain around some of the health benefits here and even some of the energetic properties. You've been talking about its uses for ADHD or ADD and, just health in general. I'd love to just hear what you found in your research. You've been working with a lot of people, over 10,000 people that you've served Amanita to now. What's the takeaways from all of this? I want to hear it all.
Yeah, well, I liked that the first portion we were talking about personal experience, because I always like to try the things I work with first, and that's kind of how it began. It was like I was working with Amanita, my wife was working with Amanita, and I thought, if I could just make this into a tincture, then I can distribute this. And I started doing that, and like the feedback was amazing from people. This was like over 2 years ago at this point. And some of the main things that I've heard from people were generally just reducing anxiety and PTSD symptoms. So I remember early on, this one woman was like, I'm able to go back to work now without crippling anxiety. I haven't been able to work. I haven't been able to do anything for like 7 months. And I started working with Amanita, and I'm able to face it now. It's pretty incredible. And other things, people that have chronic insomnia, it can help with. It helps people with just getting a very restful sleep. And then another thing that is really common is actually helping people get off of addictions. So various addictions such as benzodiazepine. That's the biggest thing that I didn't know what a benzodiazepine drug was before I started working with Amanita. And then all these people who have been addicted to benzos, came out of the woodwork, and they're like messaging me like, hey, I have this, you know, I have PAWS, you know, I have akathisia, you know. I had to look up all these things and do some research. And it's interesting because benzodiazepine is a GABA agonist, Amanita is a GABA agonist. Benzodiazepine is habit forming, it has negative side effects. And then in the long term, it kind of does the reverse that people are looking for, where it can make people anxious. It can make people just overwhelmed by just basic problems, you know, basic problems that anybody could deal with. Somebody who's gone through benzo withdrawal and damage, like brain damage from it, they can't deal with just the normal day-to-day stuff. But with Amanita, they can kind of grease the wheels, as it were. Like they can soothe their nervous system, and they can start to wean off of benzo drugs. And I've helped like dozens of people get off of benzo drugs. I've helped dozens of people get off of SSRIs. You know, I mean, like, yeah, I'm not a doctor, like blah blah blah, the disclaimer, but like, damn, like people need help, and this is like renegade medicine. I love working with this kind of medicine, because there's so many negative side effects that come with a lot of pharmaceuticals. And yes, like natural things also do have side effects too, but they're typically way less, and they're typically non-habit forming.
Yeah, and they have built-in mechanisms when you're working with a whole plant. And I learned this like with nutrition, but also in the psychedelic space. If you're working with the whole plant, there's built-in mechanisms to help with the side effects. That's how come you can move from hell to heaven. You know, it's built in. But when you're extracting parts of plants, which is what the pharmaceutical industry is, so that they can patent it. They do this in the food industry as well. And, you know, it ends up giving you a lot of side effects, including addiction, but also this part where you're using it for one reason, but then that reason gets worse. You know, like if someone goes on an SSRI for depression and then they end up with suicidal thoughts, it's craziness. If you're working with the whole plant, there's built-in mechanisms for that. And this is the difference. This is why we're not supposed to be messing with nature. Instead, we're supposed to be embracing it, protecting it, working symbiotically with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And one thing that's interesting is I believe that the Amanita muscaria stem has NAC, and NAC helps the body metabolize muscimol or something like that. It's so, and it typically people are only using caps, and whenever you buy mushrooms, you're typically only buying the caps. But whenever I forage my own mushrooms, I keep the stems too, and I put the stems in, and I noticed that there's more of an embodied experience with that. It feels more like I'm taking the entire thing. I'm working with the entire spirit.
Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful.
Yes. So, you know, a lot of people, I'm just trying to think, you know, benzo drugs, SSRIs, even opiates. I've helped people get off of opiates. Amanita doesn't even work on that receptor site, the dopamine site. But like I said in our previous segment, Amanita can provide things for people that are a completely different pathway, but achieve a similar result. And really, it's like, I mean, I don't believe there's a panacea, and I don't believe that we should be like completely relying on exogenous things coming into our being. But like, damn, we got amazing plants and mushrooms out there that are here to help us. And so if we can utilize them and respect and honor them and use them properly, then we can achieve more homeostasis, not just with ourselves, but with the planet and with life.
Yeah, I like to think about it almost like, you know, if like, let's go for Christmas. Our parents give us a gift. We're going to say thank you. Whether we use that gift, whether we love the gift, whether we hate the gift, we're going to say thank you, and we're going to have respect because we have respect for our parents. Mama Nature is the exact same thing. So why do we tarnish it? You know, it's insane. We should be building this relationship, saying thank you, whether we use the medicine or not. It is here, and it's doing something on the planet for our friends, for our family. There are so many medicines out there, and maybe Amanita is not for you, but it might be for your best friend, or it might be, you know, and it might be for you. Who knows?
Right. Yeah, I mean,
thank you.
I've worked closely with thousands of people, and I've only had a few people, like handfuls of people, have negative side effects. It's pretty amazing. I think, and a lot of those people, you know, I do have a couple anomalies I'm working with recently, but for the most part, it seems like most people's issues around Amanita are have to deal with potential radiation detoxification. Now, there's no scientific studies on this. This is purely from like Russian anecdotes that I've seen online, like with the whole Chernobyl radiation, saying that Amanita will help people detoxify. Now, I did have one husband and wife said that they had, you know, vomiting and diarrhea from taking Amanita. Very small amounts. No other person in that batch had an issue, and they're husband and wife, so not genetically related, right? But they're environmentally related. They live in the same house. So I asked them a lot of questions. They're really cool about working with me, and I said, "Hey, are you any chance? Are you near a radiation plant or nuclear power plant?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, actually, we live like really close to one." And I was like, "Well, you might be detoxifying. Like, it might be pulling the radiation out of your fat cells back into your bloodstream, so you can pass it through your kidneys and your urine." And they're like, "Wow, well, I mean that's pretty interesting." Now, there's going to be more research that is going to need to, you know, be done, but
there are other mushrooms that. Oh, sorry, Michael. I just wanted to add though that there are other mushrooms that are scientifically proven to do this, like chaga mushrooms, which I know you forage too, and it's it's wonderful for that. Anybody who's doing cancer treatments like chemo or radiation, it can be really helpful. In that time, it grows on a birch tree. Free medicine, you guys. And yeah, I totally believe that.
Right.
Amanita could be used in that, but you're right, you know, the science maybe isn't there yet.
Yeah, and I just want to say too, like, you know, some people might experience something that it's strange. Like, I actually just experienced it last night where I kind of accidentally took a little too much Amanita and it was fine, but you know, I woke up like 2 hours after I fell asleep, just with like a ton of energy. Like, I was just ready to go. And I'm like, well, it's like 3 a.m. I should probably go back to sleep. And a lot of people have experienced, not a lot, but I'd say maybe like out of all the people I've worked with, I've heard this maybe like 10 or 20 times. And I even experienced it in my first couple months working with Amanita, where I would go to sleep after taking Amanita before bedtime, and I would wake up maybe 4 to 6 hours later, and I wasn't ready to wake up, but I was like, my body was like, let's go. And one thing I've noticed too, and this is like kind of my own little correlation I'm drawing, is whenever I have taken large amounts of Amanita, like heroic doses, I either don't sleep at all or I don't need much sleep. But what will happen initially is I will usually fall asleep within the first 2 hours, and I'll kind of like take a little, you know, pre-trip nap. But it's a common thing. A lot of people, if you look up, you know, trip reports of Amanita, some people will take it and they'll fall asleep, and then they'll wake up like, you know, in the middle of the experience. And so I think that there's something happening where I'm not saying it's a replacement for sleep, but there's something where it's like it gives you that that energy and that abundance. You know, like the one experience I had, I didn't sleep the entire night, and I didn't go to bed till 3 a.m. the next morning. But I didn't feel like I needed to. So, you know, but the beauty of working with plants and mushrooms is that there are so many different plants and so many different mushrooms. And if something doesn't work for somebody, there's going to be another plant for them. That's why, like, God, you know, universe creator made this like plethora, this abundance of all these beautiful allies that we can work with.
Yeah, there's like over 144 different psychedelic mushrooms alone, and I think now because of the hybrids, there's like over 180. So it's incredible what's available to us.
They just discovered a new psilocybin, and they named it after Paul Stamets. Did you see that?
Yes, I heard about that. Yeah. I can't remember what it is, but it has his name in it. Yeah, it's
like psilocybin stametsi or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah. So, so many different amazing medicines we can work with, and that's why I'm starting to work with things like blue lotus and kava and mugwort, and things that are like kind of in that genre of like helping you sleep, relax, get in touch with the inner child, which we haven't even talked about that yet, which I'd love to. Amanita is great for that.
Please. How is it helping with the inner child
I didn't
stuff?
hear you cut out.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, please dive into that. How is it helping with inner child, like, you know, soothing that part of ourselves? Because that's often, you know, the root of many mental health disorders, and why we get stuck in similar patterns over and over, you know, or why we get triggered to, you know, into that default mode network. So I'd love to hear how this is helping in that area, what you've experienced and what you're witnessing from others too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a background in meditation and yoga. I was a yoga teacher, and I've done a lot of meditating throughout my life. And I think that things like that can work in an adjunct way with Amanita. And I think that whenever we pair Amanita with different kind of healing modalities, we can really potentiate the effects a lot more. Like, we can get a lot deeper in. So say, for example, you took an Amanita muscaria microdose and you had a shamanic journey. So you either had a pre-recorded, or you went into like a sound bath, or you went into like a shamanic journey, or you just sit and meditate and journal and spend like an hour or two, you know, at the end of your day or the beginning of your day, and just kind of work with Amanita on a consistent basis. What people have discovered is that Amanita kind of shows us that time isn't real. The mind doesn't perceive time in a chronological way. The mind everything is the same. So if I'm watching something, if I'm witnessing somebody do it, if I'm actually doing something, or if I have a memory, the experience to the mind is all the same. It's living through that every single time it's seen or remembered that experience. So if you take something like trauma, if something really terrible has happened to somebody and they have these external stimuli that trigger that memory, they're reliving that trauma again every single time. And that is the trauma cycle. Okay. So with Amanita muscaria, the main compound being muscimol, it actually suppresses the fight or flight response in the body. It puts you into that parasympathetic response state. And so it's almost like you're getting into this hypnotic state on a microdose level. And that's how we can actually really reprogram our brain and our being and our entire body, like every cell. And so whenever we can suppress that fight or flight, whenever we can take a moment and pause, whenever that stimulus triggers that memory, or whenever that, whatever, the thought pops up, Amanita can disable that physical, visceral response in the body and allow us to witness and to be present with whatever trauma is there, and actually move beyond it, because we don't have that trauma reaction cycle back and forth. Because whenever we react, we're basically affirming that trauma and saying, this is not safe, I'm not safe, close it up, guard it up. And we allow ourselves to be open. So we're actually able to transcend that trauma and step onto a new timeline where we're not that traumatized person anymore. And I personally haven't had a whole lot of trauma in my childhood, but the trauma that I did have, that I was actually ignoring and telling myself wasn't that bad, I've been able to really work through and witness that these last 2 years more than ever in my life. And that's, I give credit to my own inner journey, my own inner work, but working with Amanita muscaria has been incredible for that. And one thing too, I just wanted to add is that if we have something that is a blockage, okay, like it could be in present day, present life. If we have something that is a blockage, I had an experience with Amanita where I was kneeling down at my altar, and I was just actually really communing with Amanita. And I believe she has a presence, a very feminine, divine feminine presence. And so she was guiding me through this kind of like blockage, like, okay, well, you feel this way, then like what would happen if X or Y? And I noticed that I was able to actually go there. I was actually able to go there without having this emotional, visceral, like, no, I can't go there, like it's not going to happen, like I'm not going to entertain any of those ideas. I was able to actually witness those without this like overwhelming emotion. And so in some ways it kind of can numb your emotions, but it's not like you're ignoring them. It's like you're really able to be present. And some people would even say it's like Amanita's doing subconscious surgery, where you are asleep or it's in the background. That's why a lot of times Amanita, like the spirit, will come to you in a dream. And a lot of people have never even worked with Amanita, and maybe they'll have a dream about her, and then the next day they find somebody like me or somebody else on the internet where they're talking about Amanita. I had an example where I had a wholesale client. I got off the phone with him, and he got his Uber, and the Uber driver just randomly started talking about Amanita and how it changed his life. And like, yeah, the guy had a mushroom shirt on, but he didn't say anything, and I just got off the phone with him, and it was just like, the synchronicities, I believe, in life are just baffling, but with Amanita, it's been particularly heightened, the level of synchronicities. And I just think that it's really the medicine of our times. We have so much trauma. We have so much PTSD. We have so much anxiety. Everybody's moving too fast. We're way too overstimulated. And working with Amanita teaches us to slow down, to take a break, to rest, to be able to work, but to be in that flow state. Not like our, notifications on our brain and our phone. We got 20 tabs open in our brain, and Amanita is like, let's focus on one thing at a time. All right, let's just take a break. Let's calm down. We got one thing we can do. That's all we can do anyway. You can't do 20 things at once. So I really think that she's the medicine for our time right now.
Yeah, thank you so much for these beautiful insights. I could definitely dive in more to these subjects. We'll have to have you on again to do just that because it's so powerful. But right now we really should cut to our sponsors. They're doing wonderful things too, and we'll have you right back. Okay, Michael?
Sounds good.
Okay, bye for now.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net. In February of 2022, the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club and Ted Smith were fined $6.5 million. This for helping 8,500 patients with access to medical cannabis. In our interview with Ted, he spoke to us about how people can donate to help in an upcoming court challenge. And here is part of that interview. From what I've seen lately, I believe that you've got something that you're trying to do as far as fundraising to deal with this next court challenge.
For now, people can write checks directly to Jack Lloyd Law Corporation or send e-transfers to save the VCBC at gmail.com. I guess those are the two easiest ways for people to help right now.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Cannabis edibles are an effective way to manage pain and other ailments, especially when you deal with your trusted partner, Legacy 420, in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. You see, we lab test every product on site to ensure proper dosage every time, which is critical when consuming cannabis edibles. All Legacy 420 edibles are made by our classically trained baker and chocolatier, and we also have super tasty vegan options.
Our baker has been in the industry for 25 years. She's also a chocolatier. Everything from savory to sweet, your chocolate bars, brownies, butter tarts, you name it, we make it.
Talk to our knowledgeable Cannatex about our incredible variety available. Give your trusted partners a call. Legacy 420 out on your road.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Hello and welcome back to the Integration Station. I'm Ashley and I've got a friend Michael here too. This is Michael Wilson from Harmony Acres Farm, and we've been talking all things Amanita on this show. Now I really want to dive into, how somebody would go about working with Amanita. How do they source it? What does ceremony look like? What's the difference between a microdose and a macrodose? Let us know, Michael. Yeah. Share away.
Oh, yeah. Great question. So, I would say, for most people starting out, getting there's multiple vendors, not just me, but I make tinctures of Amanita that are fully decarbed. I do have a partial decarb one if people want to have a little bit of ibotenic acid. Or if they want to educate themselves and empower themselves to make their own medicine, which I encourage, they can buy their own caps and do their own preparation. It's not that hard. It just requires some basic math skills, a cooktop stove, a pH meter if you really want to get precise with it. Because there is also I just want to plug this group that I'm an admin in, the Amanita Muscaria Science and Magic group on Facebook. Also, if you're on Reddit, just r/Amanita Muscaria. there's a great beginner's guide there that is put together by my friend and associate, and it's basically like just has everything you need to know about Amanita, but it's you know, you have to read it. You know, a lot of people don't want to read through a bunch of stuff. So one thing we're going to do is actually like a video version of the beginner's guide so that people can digest that easier. But you know, there's a study called the Trent Austin patent, and basically outlines that you can achieve a basic, like a full decarb of Amanita if you take the caps and you grind them up and you put them in water and you adjust the pH of the water with something like food grade citric acid, or you'd have to use straight lemon juice because you have to get down to 3 pH. So if you boil that for approximately 3 hours at 100 degrees Celsius, you will basically achieve a full decarb, and you can let that cool down, strain off the mushrooms, maybe add honey or not, and you can drink that. Now the dosing, you're going to have to figure that out. But, you know, microdosing, I think, you know, it's the same thing with psilocybin. You know, everybody's version of a microdose seems to be different, you know.
Yeah. And I OD those all the time. Because every mushroom's different. Every batch I get is different. And I make blue honey with it too. So yeah, there's no knowing. Even with chocolate, I make any recipe. I think it's like, blah. But I'm not the scientist or math. I'm not so good with math either.
Right. So
have to experiment.
Yeah, like, you know, something like I'm sorry, what was that?
So you have to just experiment and see for yourself. You know, direct experience is better than what you're going to get off of somebody else's experience, because we're all made differently.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I just encourage people to start slow and start low and go slow. I like that. You know, every batch you make is going to be different, you know, and that's why it's really, you know, like with psilocybin, you could have a penis envy strain or a golden teacher, and they're going to be like way different, you know. It's so you know, if people want, you know, you can also nibble the caps. Like people like to just nibble the caps or like grind it up and put it in a powder and put those in capsules and take the capsules. You know, there's a lot of different ways you can take Amanita. You can also smoke Amanita. You can take the dried caps and like literally smoke them. You can make a tea and reduce the tea down to nothing and make a resin and smoke that or vape that. If you really have a chemistry background, you can extract the muscimol and vaporize that. And you can also use a tincture, a tea, or an oil infusion topically for pain reduction, for localized pain reduction. So arthritis, nerve pain, joint pain, muscle pain. It even helps with some skin conditions, I believe, possibly psoriasis. So it's as versatile as cannabis in its you know, applications. But you know, as far as preparation goes, like what I would recommend is a full decarb. Some people like to nibble on the caps. I think that's probably fine. You are going to get some ibotenic acid, and it's really up to someone's constitution and their personal preference. Like somebody who's prone to seizures, I would not recommend having any ibotenic acid. I would say that that's going to stimulate you in a negative way. Now, most people, the majority of people, can handle some ibotenic acid. But I think for people starting out, you should just err on the side of safe and like go with the muscimol. So if you know, you can look up in that beginner's guide on the Amanita groups. There's preparation guides. We even have a list of vendors that we've, you know, basically they pay every month to be on this you know, legit vendor list. So and then as far as like a microdose goes, I think that's going to depend. If you're doing dry caps, you could probably start with like 1/4 gram to 1/2 gram. But if you're doing like a tea extract, you might want to do less, because I believe it's more bioavailable. And in my experience, working with people with my tinctures, they need less than what I'm hearing people are taking with caps. Like way less. Like I have customers that are taking like 30 milligrams to 250 milligrams, which is 1/4 gram. So yeah, I mean, I had somebody quit benzodiazepines on 30 milligrams of Amanita. Like, that is amazing. 30 milligrams is like such a small amount. So that's a 1/3 of 1/10 of a gram for people who know what that is.
Smaller than a psilocybin microdose. That would be like a nano dose of psilocybin, essentially.
Yeah, very small. So then, as far as ceremony goes, there isn't a whole lot of literature, but there is some historical references. Something that happened to me was I took a large dose of Amanita, and this was a little under a year ago, and I felt inspired to offer this medicine to people, like to conduct ceremonies, to host ceremonies for people and help them guide themselves through this experience. And I thought to myself during this experience, and I was communing with Amanita, like, what would this look like? Like, how would this go? And I was imagining, a fire, and like we're making the tea together, and we're moving, we're doing some qigong, we're getting our bodies going. Yeah. And then, like, as it started to kick in, like we would start making music together, like collectively singing and drumming, and like, kind of, getting into this powerful state together as a community. And I was like, well, that's interesting, because that's how I think it would go, but maybe I'm wrong. So I'm going to ask some experts, and, not trusting my intuition, right? And, I asked the experts, and every time I asked somebody and they pointed me to some information, it was like literally that's how it went down. Like, we make it together as a group, we move our bodies, we make music, we chant to our ancestors, we like, call in our inner childs, like we're doing this like deep shadow work. And so it was just right on the money. So as far as like personal ceremony goes, I don't recommend people do the hero dose. The hero dose is a very, very challenging experience. For most people, a threshold experience would be very beneficial. A threshold experience.
What would that be?
Right. So a threshold experience would be, and this is a big range, but it could be somewhere between 3 grams to even 10 or 15 grams. Okay. And I know that that's such a wide range, but we have to account that the mushrooms can vary in potency. Throughout the season, they can lose potency if they're not stored properly. The first picks of the season are way more potent than like the second, third, or fourth flush. Also, each mushroom can vary, even if they're growing side by side. So it's always, like I said, start low and go slow. And Amanita, the full effects of Amanita take approximately 2 hours to fully kick in. So it's like an edible, don't eat the other half of the brownie if you're not feeling anything. Yeah. Wait a couple hours. And this ceremony typically would start, towards the end of the evening and kind of go into the wee hours. And like a hero dose, that starts usually around 15 grams. I've even heard of people taking 30 or 60 grams at a time. And it's also important to note that there are other types of Amanita mushrooms that are more potent, like the Amanita pantherina. Amanita pantherina is a whole other beast, and I've worked with pantherina in hero doses, and we'll just say I'm not going there again. I learned a lot from that experience, from the couple experiences I've had, and they're somewhere between 3 or 5 times stronger than the red muscaria. And I had some West Coast panthers. If anybody's familiar with this story, it's from Joe Rogan's podcast with Paul Stamets. Paul Stamets is talking about his experience with the pantherinoids, or the pantherina. And he had, repetitive motion syndrome, and he was forgetting what he had just done. And that's exactly what happened to me. I had a very difficult experience. I ended up running through the forest for 12 hours in the middle of the night. I could have died. But the problem was I wasn't prepared for this. I didn't think it was going to be that intense of an experience. And I didn't have anybody that was my trip sitter or my guide. I was supposed to be the guide. And, that was with those panther caps, and like, they are no joke. They really are no joke. And I think it's really important for people to recognize, I have a lot of people come to me and they're like, how much to trip? And I'm like, I don't think you want that. I think that you probably want something like psilocybin or LSD. The deep trips with Amanita, it's not for fun. It's like, we're doing deep work here. Now, a threshold experience, I just had to give that caveat, not to get too grim or dark, but it's really important because, harm reduction is number one priority.
Yeah.
But the threshold experiences are amazing because you're not getting into this like blackout, forgetful, time looping state. You can still get a lot of the benefits, like I've been talking about for this whole podcast, with those threshold experiences, and they're going to be more impactful than the microdose. The microdose is this like long-term thing that we're doing, right? And the threshold doses could be, infrequent, like once a month or a couple times a year kind of thing. And you're going to get a lot of benefit out of those, and it's safe, or safer. I still think that you should have a guide with you. I don't think that people should just do this by themselves in their room. I think that it's, especially because the dosing and the preparation and everything, it's a lot to take on as a newcomer. And the last thing I would want to happen is somebody have a negative experience. And so having somebody that is familiar with the medicine, somebody who is a strong person for you, that can hold space for you during that experience, I really recommend having that. And just keep in mind that, the full effects can last up to 12 hours in most cases. So
take the time off.
I'd say that. Yes. And take the next day off. If you can, take the next day off. Yeah.
Do you have any advice for integration, like after the ceremony, after the experience?
Yeah. I mean, I would say give yourself time. Like, if you can, take the next day off. Journal, writing in a journal, meditating, sitting with yourself, allowing yourself to kind of be still in that like receptive state, right? Not like doing, like, whenever I had that really, really intense Amanita Panther trip, I basically gave myself 4 days off to just like not do business, not work. I was writing every day. I was meditating. It was very challenging experience for me, and I learned a lot from it. And I think that if somebody can just spend some time with themselves and not just jump right back into like the grind or whatever, that's going to allow you to actually glean the lessons that were given to you, rather than just like forgetting them and going on and kind of doing whatever is next. Now, I know not everybody has that opportunity, and that's why I think it's really important. Like, don't half-ass this. I think that you're going to get so much more out of it if you really allow yourself to do it right. Now, that being said, I think if people are just in a situation where they can't take more than a day or two off at a time, or they don't even have a weekend, like, just work with the medicine as you can. You know, maybe not going into like the deeper experiences, but everybody can microdose. A microdose means it's subperceptual. So like you're not supposed to be like having a body high or having visuals, you know. Like I knew somebody who said, yeah, I microdose psilocybin. I said, what's your microdose? And he said, I take 1 gram. And I'm like, dude, that is not a microdose. You were tripping.
Yeah, absolutely. And that happens here too. Some people do have a high tolerance where that's what it is, but you really do have to start slow. Once you feel it, that's how you know that's your threshold, go down, you know, because you don't want to feel every day. You want it to be something that is working, you know, subconsciously. And you still build a relationship with it that way. It's with you. It's with you in your dreams. It's with you in your body. It's helping, you know, reprogram your DNA. And so,
yeah, absolutely. I feel like Amanita is right on par with that too. And that's why, like, if anybody wants to have like a threshold or a hero experience, like start microdosing with Amanita first. And it's really important that you get the call, you know, like if you're jumping in willy-nilly, then you might want to examine what is behind that. If there's like ego behind that, if there is like, you know, I just kind of want to have like another notch in my belt, the psychonaut explorer kind of thing. Like it's not that kind of medicine. And from what I've experienced with Amanita is that she will give you everything you need whenever you are humble. And whenever you come to her with an ego, she'll slap you in the face. And like she's very similar to ayahuasca, like a very, very caring, loving mother, but very stern too. Like you don't want to mess with her. And you gotta come in with respect. And she's very sweet and loving whenever you're like that. And that's I think that yeah, like starting slow, microdosing for months before you get into a bigger experience. And then if you want a hero experience, I think that you should have somebody who's worked with Amanita specifically, somebody who's physically stronger than you in case you need restrained. Like no joke that in Russia they would actually like strap people to tables before they take large amounts to prevent like the thrashing and like potential violent behavior. And I mean, yeah, there's some medicine there, but I think that you can get so much out of those smaller doses that are safer. That's where I kind of draw the line with people. So yeah, I hope that answers everything.
Yeah, it really does. Thank you so much. I guess what's left is really just hearing about what it is you're doing on the farm and how anybody can contact you as well. What is it you're up to now? How can people get involved?
Yeah. So I've been here for about 5 years, and I've been an organic farmer since like 2012. And I grow some things here for the business, like Tulsi basil. It's one of my favorite herbs to work with.
It's wonderful.
And yeah, it's amazing. And So I grow a lot of things here, and I have a full-time extraction lab. Like, this is just a part, like behind me is just a part of what I do. I have another machine in the other room that is like, I don't know, it's like 8 feet tall and it's stainless steel, and it's just like the entire room is taken over by it. So that's what I do. Is I'm a full-time extraction lab. I'm a organic farmer. I'm a forager. I'm going to start doing plant walks. I do consultations and coaching, and I provide retail and wholesale customers with extracts. I do alchemical preparations as well, and I'm going to start getting more into alchemy as time goes on, because that's like really where my heart and soul is for like how I want to prepare the medicine. So it's like a whole ceremony, and I love it. And so yeah, I have maybe like 10, probably at this point like 20 wholesale customers, and I have 3 retail outlets online. I have an Etsy, I have my Harmony Acres website, and I have my allthingsamanita.com website. The allthingsamanita.com website is what I put new products in, and it's kind of like where I'm putting all my new stuff, and it has everything that I offer. The other websites and the Etsy doesn't I'm not able to have Amanita products on Etsy. It violates their policy. So if people want to get in touch with me, they can go to allthingsamanita.com and find the contact, and that'll send me an email. I'm also like really active on Instagram. The main Instagram I use is my Harmony Acres. So it's like Harmony_acres. That's where I post like everything about my life, my farm, and my business. I have another Instagram for the All Things Amanita, and it's just kind of Amanita stuff. So yeah, I'd say that is that's probably the best ways to contact me and get in touch. If you have any questions about the products, I'm happy to answer your questions. If you want to do consultations, I do consultations ranging from like what kind of herb or fungus you might want to work with, how to improve your life, your health, your wealth, your nutrition, and I'm gonna start. I guess it's like, you always have that mindset of like, oh, I need to do training before I can do this or that. Well, there's so many successful people in this world that haven't graduated college, or they don't have a degree or a certificate. So one thing I'm passionate about is like holistic coaching. I love helping people in like all aspects of their life. So if that's something that people want, I'm happy to work with them.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael. I'm going to link that stuff below too. Thank you for providing that information before. Also, you're in our network now too, so anybody else that's in our network, you can contact Michael right through there, ask any questions too, and then it's helping everybody who's listening to the conversation. But I think that would be the same on Facebook or Reddit or in your comments on Instagram too. So it's wonderful that there's so many different ways to access you and the information and the work that you're providing. I'm so grateful that we've been connected too, and really looking forward to all the good stuff to come. So, is there anything else you'd like to add before we head off today?
No, I just want to say thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about Amanita. I feel like every conversation that people who are in the Amanita sphere are able to have in a public way is like moving the culture forward. And so I just want to thank you and your producers and everybody. And I guess the one thing I would just say to the listeners is just continue being curious. That's all.
Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Cannabis edibles are an effective way to manage pain and other ailments, especially when you deal with your trusted partner, Legacy 420, in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. You see, we lab test every product on site to ensure proper dosage every time, which is critical when consuming cannabis edibles. All Legacy 420 edibles are made by our classically trained baker and chocolatier, and we also have super tasty vegan options.
Our baker has been in the industry for 25 years. She's also a chocolatier. Everything from savory to sweet, your chocolate bars, brownies, butter tarts, you name it, we make it.
Talk to our knowledgeable Cannatex about our incredible variety available. Give your trusted partners a call. Legacy 420 out on your road.
In February of 2022, the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club and Ted Smith were fined $6.5 million. This for helping 8,500 patients with access to medical cannabis. In our interview with Ted, he spoke to us about how people can donate to help in an upcoming court challenge. And here is part of that interview. From what I've seen lately, I believe that you've got something that you're trying to do as far as fundraising to deal with this next court challenge.
For now, people can write checks directly to Jack Lloyd Law Corporation or send e-transfers to savethebcbc@gmail.com. I guess those are the two easiest ways for people to help right now.
Pace Radio is the People Advocating Cannabis Education Radio Network.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
We are People Advocating Cannabis Education here at paceradio.net.
Christmas is the most iconic holiday in the world, and it's full of strange traditions. Activities like hanging stockings and singing songs about flying reindeer have become so deeply ingrained in Christmas that we don't even wonder where they came from. When we trace the origin of Christmas traditions, we find that many of them can be linked to the rituals surrounding the psychedelic mushroom Amanita muscaria. The large red-white spotted Amanita muscaria is the most recognizable mushroom on Earth. Throughout history and across many cultures, people valued this mysterious mushroom for its powerful hallucinogenic properties. For over a millennia, the indigenous people of the Arctic collected Amanita muscaria. These people were called shaman. The word shaman is derived from the Tungus-speaking people of Siberia and connotes a religious specialist. Each year the shaman would pick the Amanita, dry them, load them into a big sack, and then on December 21st, during the winter solstice, the shaman would go from house to house delivering their gifts. These shaman were older bearded men who wore the symbolic colors of red and white to honor the mushroom. During the winter solstice, the entryways to people's homes were buried under several feet of snow, so it was easier for the shaman to drop the mushrooms down the smoke hole. This is where the idea of presents down the chimney comes from. The colors of Christmas are red, white, and green. These colors symbolize the red and white Amanita muscaria under an evergreen tree. Amanita muscaria is found throughout the northern hemisphere under conifers and birch trees, just like red and white presents under the Christmas tree. Although deaths are extremely rare, Amanita muscaria is poisonous. In order to reduce the toxicity, shaman would hang the mushrooms on tree branches for them to dry, just like the colorful ornaments on a Christmas tree. Santa's flying reindeer have a similar connection to the Amanita muscaria mushrooms. Reindeer are common across Europe and Siberia, and just like the human inhabitants of these areas, they too consumed mushrooms. Siberians who ate the mushrooms may have hallucinated that the grazing reindeer were actually flying. Siberians would also drink the urine of the reindeer because the urine contained the hallucinogenic compounds without the harmful toxins. To add to things, Rudolph led the other flying reindeer with his glowing red nose, which might have been a representation of the Amanita muscaria leading the psychedelic journey. And it's possible that the idea of helper elves assisting Santa might go back to the spirits encountered by the shaman during a mushroom trip. In fact, the entire image of Santa Claus himself closely resembles that of a mushroom. While there are many theories about the true origin of Christmas traditions, this excerpt from James Arthur's book, Mushrooms and Mankind, probably best summarizes the Santa magic mushroom theory. Why do people bring pine trees into their houses at the winter solstice, placing brightly colored, red and white, packages under their boughs, as gifts to show their love for each other and as representations of the love of God and the gift of His Son's life? It is because under the pine bough is the exact location where one would find this most sacred substance, the Amanita muscaria, in the wild. This episode is sponsored by the Great Courses Plus, a subscription on-demand learning library with over 11,000 video lectures taught by experts at the top of their field. If you love learning and expanding your mind, then take advantage of a free trial when you use our link. The Great Courses Plus covers unique subjects like the science of fear, martial arts, UFOs, secret societies, photography, cooking, and so much more. I especially enjoyed their course on the Analects of Confucius, which went deep into Confucius's
listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Are you a cannabis content creator? Are you looking for a place to have your content seen? If you answer yes to both questions, then you need to check out cbgtv.com. CBGTV broadcasting to a worldwide audience. Find us at cbgtv.com.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.